In space, no one can hear you scream. It's the tagline to one of the greatest sci-fi horror movies of the 1970s, and one that honestly you would think would make a very odd choice to license out for a game. Bizarre Atari 2600 Pac-Man clone aside. This Commodore 64 version, on the other hand, was developed by Concept Software and published as the debut title for Mind Games, a strategic games label launched by Argus Press in 1984. Now, this review is going to primarily focus on the C64 version, but we'll also take a quick look at the Spectrum version to see how it measures up. Compared to your average release of the time, the packaging for Alien is superb. This large clamshell case means the infamous egg cover is even more unsettling than it would be on a smaller package. Along with that, you get this lovely instruction booklet. It opens with a retelling of the first act of the movie, and that leads directly into the opening of the game. After sitting through that tape load, it's not incredibly slow, but it's not that fast either. The title screen is presented, and in kicks the ominous title theme. It doesn't really push the SID hard from a technical perspective, but there is some great use of sound filtering, and it fills out the atmosphere incredibly well. Then, you get the opening options. For the C64 version, this is really about which of the scenarios you wish to play. The Spectrum version also provides options for choosing which joystick interface you've got connected. The first scenario is the full scenario, and this one acts out just like the movie, in which one member of the Nostromo's crew has fallen victim to the Xenomorph, and it's up to the remaining crew to stop it before they're taken out as well. Unlike the movie though, both this first victim and the android are randomized every time you play. This subtly increases the tension, as you can't tell which members of the crew you can and can't rely on. The other scenario, simply titled Short, sets things up to mimic the final act of the movie, where the final members of the crew have decided to scuttle the Nostromo, launch the escape shuttle, and hopefully leaving the Xenomorph on board when the ship goes up. Once you've done that, it's now about getting into the core gameplay, and here Alien presents itself as a tactical control 'em up, at least as I like to call it that. Rather than directly control your characters, here you provide orders. These range from quick ones like moving between rooms and decks, picking up and using items that you can find, and generally just trying to outwit the Xenomorph. Now, these orders, you issue them from a control panel on the right side of the screen. This is done with the joystick and allows you to select a character and then actions from the list provided. You can also call up deck plans and view each of the 3 decks. Now, these won't show you live positions of the characters, but you could use them to get a handy feel of the general layout. It sounds straightforward enough with this interface to just issue orders, respond to them, and let the game play out. But the big tentpole feature that Alien has is something called the personality control system. This encompasses both the facility to issue orders, but also how the crew will respond to them, and this is based on their present state of mind. It kind of sounds buzzwordy, but this feels to me like a groundbreaking feature, at least for 1984, simply because how the conditions of the game play and the events that occur, all these tie into how the characters' states of mind change as the game progresses. So, you have actions like finding a useful tool. That helps give the characters a boost of confidence. If you've got a character in trouble and you've got other characters on the way to assist, this helps them feel a little less troubled in a tense situation. But the opposite can, and let's be honest, likely will happen as well. Pushing a character way too hard or way too early, and they'll start to feel a little tense. Pushing them to do things which are outside of their skill set, well, it'll just make it worse. It's also not helped by elements of claustrophobia. If you put more than 3 members of the crew in the same room, they'll all start to panic and they'll all potentially cause trouble. Now, if it happens and you've got a crew member that's just a little too shell-shocked to work, all you can do is get them isolated and give them time to recover. Time is not your friend here, because any unscheduled stop eats into the oxygen supply. You don't have a lot of time to dispatch the Xenomorph and get back into cryosleep before you run out of air. With that out of the way, it's all about putting a stop to the Xenomorph now. So firstly, you need to locate it. In order to do this, you really need to locate and equip the trackers that are on deck. They'll give you an audio ping when you're in a room that is adjacent to the alien's present location. So, get a couple of crew members to arm trackers, keep them close by and explore the ship. Eventually, you'll be able to use those pings to isolate the alien's location to a single room. Now, when you do that, it's a case of killing it. One of the items you can pick up is an incinerator, and that'll eventually help you push the aliens into the airlocks. And if you can get it into one of the airlocks and flush it out, you've pretty much got it under control. Direct confrontation is not really the best path with a giant creature that has acid for blood. In a game about survival, things can, and honestly, they probably will go very wrong. And when your crew losses are mounting, you've got one final option left in reserve, and that's to scuttle a ship and ride away on the escape shuttle. This requires you to trigger the self-destruct, get to the shuttle, and hope you've got enough time to survive and launch. It has to be said that the shuttle will only hold 3 members of the crew. So until you're down to that final 3, you can't use it as an option. And more importantly, don't forget to rescue the cat on your way out, or it's going to be all for nothing. Whether your crew have passed away, defeated by the alien, whether you successfully flush it out and get back to cryosleep, or you actually do scuttle the Nostromo and launch the shuttle, your outcome and your reward is presented with a simple green on black text display. This reports who did and didn't survive, and also gives you a final percentage rating of how you did. Honestly, for quite an early release, you're not going to expect groundbreaking graphics, and they are very minimal here. You are primarily looking at deck plans, and you have icons indicating the members of crew positions, other facilities. Now, color-wise, I think I prefer the Spectrum's look. A black background with colored UI elements feels more suited to the feel of terminals used in the movie, whereas the black on green used in the C64 version looks a little off to me. As for the sound, the SID chip is used excellently on the C64 version. I've already spoken about that title tune, as ominous as it is, but you've also got a solid assortment of sound effects in-game. For little events such as access grates being opened, doors as well, the rising heartbeat of your crew as things get worse and the situation deteriorates, but the most important one, the tense pings of the tracker. As you close in on that beast, hearing that going off is a sound you're going to get very familiar with, and it's going to make you tinge with excitement and fear at the same time. As for that Spectrum version, being 1984, it only has support for the internal speaker of the 48K models. It still comes off very well though. The music doesn't feel that solid on the title screen, but in-game, all those sound effects, the great sounds, the tracker pings, they all are done very well for what that speaker can put out. And all of that helps the atmosphere feel tense and engaging. But honestly, movie tie-in titles typically serve as nothing more than to shoehorn the story of a movie into something that's existing gameplay-wise. The results are typically average, and more commonly, they're underwhelming. For me, this is something which you can't say about this conversion of Alien. It takes its source material, it builds upon it in a way that feels incredibly appropriate to convey the tension which the movie served up. And this game feels like a legitimate way to experience that on your humble 8-bit C64 or Spectrum. Yes, the interface is a bit rough at points, Personally, I'm not a fan in which you have to manually check each crew member for their location, nor am I a fan in which the Spectrum doesn't report the tracker. If you want to actually get the status of the tracker, you need to select its carrier. But at the end of the day, if you're patient, if you're willing to be so, and you're willing to take the time to get used to the controls, and are okay with the thought of being in this tense scenario, then for my money, Alien is a game that you certainly need to go check out. And if you're a fan of the movie, I think that doubly applies.